Denzil Lacey for Amped and Grooveworks. I am the imaging producer for the CHR part of the imaging company. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to run through one of my branded intros and how I make them, and what I do, and what is actually going on in the plugins side of things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this quickly and then we'll get into it.
I'm Grace from Clean Bandit. This is our last hit music. FM 104.
So that is the branded intro itself. As you can tell, there's a lot of stuff going on. If you look through it, the screen is probably not big enough for it. So what I'll do is I'm going to go through the VO side of things first. So this is a completely customizable template I made for FM 104, and I use this across everything I do. This one might be a little bit more adapted to branded intros because I like to use a bit of MIDI to kind of identify different keys in the song, so I can auto-tune different parts of the voice and to let singers kind of sing the FM 104 element into it. So first of all, I've got a VO chain, which first of all starts off with a de-esser. Again, this is very much dependent on the voice I'm working with. So if the voice was very essy, I'm going to bring down the threshold and it's going to do a bit more work. But generally I'm not going to move it too much from around here, because otherwise it can have this, weird sound and it's taking a bit too much out. So you have to use that very carefully. Then I go through a compressor, which is the C1, which is set quite light. Then I go through the CLA 2A, which I love. And analog is always set off for me in all these plugins because it just generates unwanted noise, really. Then I've got the L2, which is doing the final kind of limiting on all the voices together, because all the voiceovers I have in this session go through this VO bus. Then on the reverb, this is the reverb I use. Generally what you'll find is when I'm putting reverb on auto-tuned pieces, I'm going to turn up the reverb just a little bit because I want to have that kind of wider sound on the auto-tuned voices, because sometimes they can sound a bit computerized or a bit kind of fake, I suppose. So I think that kind of gives it an extra bit, breath of fresh air, really. So then on my station voice, I have got two EQs. I've got the linear EQ broadband, and I've got the Waves API 560. I use this on everything. So this is our master station voice, Mark, and as you can see, there's quite a lot going on here. So they're the two EQs I'll use. Then I'm going to go through a CLA 76, which is set for him. Again, analog should be off. Yes, it is. Then I go through an L2, which is quite harsh. I'll get through that in a second. Then finally goes through a meta flanger, which is set at a 2 mix, which is quite low. Then I've got a number of different sends. I've got delay, reverb, upwards, distortion, and vocoder. I won't use these mainly on the main station voices very much. That will be more for the likes of auto-tune voices on singers, and just to give a bit more width to things. So it's pretty much the same then for Jade, who is our female station voice. There's just a bit more high-end going on, and the L2 is set, I think it's quite similar. Yeah, very similar going on there. The voices are not too different on what they need. Then I go through the likes of background vocals, which generally, yeah, they're quite different. So if you look at those, a little bit different. There's a bit more, a lot of the low end is taken out. They're just kind of background stuff to give it a bit more width. And they have an out ceiling of -13, so they're quite low. They're just going on in the background. Then if you look at my sends, I've got the delay, I've got the reverb, I've got the upwards effect, and I've distortion and vocoder. In terms of vocoder, this is the one I like to use, and generally I'm going to tweak these settings every time because obviously the key is different for each song. As you can see, this song must have been in C minor, I think. I don't even actually know, I didn't use that on this track. C minor is just by default, and these are kind of the default settings I'll use to start off. I'm always going to turn off this nonsense. I don't like the sound of it. Harmonies turn up a little bit, brightness and stuff like that. And I love using the talkbox effect on the actual vocal part of the mouth. Have a little bit of reverb going on, short delay, bass turned down quite low, synthesizer quite low, and the input's always kind of a little bit more than the rest of them. So that's kind of the settings I use. Obviously it all starts off at 12 o'clock. So there's a lot of tweaking you can go on and do in the mouth. It's only about $40–50. I think it's well worth the money. Then in terms of effects, I generally just have a trim, which trims everything to -6. and I like working as low as possible so I can bring up the mix at the end so it doesn't sound too muddled at the end. Then sometimes on sound design I'm going to put a bit of high end, take a bit of the low end out. As you can see from here, they're all kind of tweaked to each track, and yeah, that's kind of generally what I use. Just a little bit of EQing just so it doesn't sound too bassy. And then on the whole thing, I'm going to use a PAS analyzer. What the PAS analyzer does is it analyzes the frequencies of that track. So as you can see here, this is a sound design. So this is quite bassy. So what I assume here is it's some sort of sub that I might have used to bring in the song, so that you can see it's quite bassy. And I'm going to have that in the finalizer as well at the very end, just seeing where frequencies are. Now this one, that needs to go. As you can see, it's peaking up there. So what you're kind of looking for here is a flat enough sort of overall frequency of the whole track. You don't want it too bassy, it's just going to sound too bassy, too whatever. So you're just going to be tweaking this every time, and I'm going to put that on most of my tracks just to see where everything is sitting. As you can see, it's on a lot of the sound design and effects. So I'm constantly looking at these just to make sure I've got the best sound possible. So then on my finalizer, I have got a compressor, which is the Waves API 2500, which I love, and I'm always tweaking this. Generally with this one, as I'm looking for as little gain reduction as possible, so I'm never going to go over -3, -2, so I'm going to have it quite low. As you can see, it is quite low. It's never going outside of that kind of range, and I'm going to set that and tweak that accordingly. Next up, as I say, I've got the linear phase EQ, which is taking out a bit of the low and high end. They're kind of the frequencies we don't hear, so I'm just going to remove them and boost and adjust other frequencies as well. Then I've got a limiter, which is the L3 Ulti-Maximizer, which is going has a little bit of stuff going on the high and low end again, which is boosting stuff. And then I've got the final Ultra Maximizer, and with this I'm generally looking for no more than -3 dB of gain reduction. So that's kind of an overview of one of my sessions. I have a different session for every different project I work with. So I could have one for branded intros, I could have one for, you know, a sweeper, or a lot of the comedy bits we do on our breakfast show, the Strawberry Alarm Clock. They'll have, actually generally when I'm working with a song for the Strawberry Alarm Clock, I start from 0 because I want every track to sound different. So I will have, you know, different channels going on for delays and for reverb, because a lot of those tracks we want them to sound as big as possible. So that's kind of an overview of my session. There you go.